Okay. Yep, it's there. Okay. So I don't need to do anything else from my end, right? Where is that? It says end stream. I think it's already streaming.
All right, let's present this. Okay, can everybody hear me okay? All right, let's present this.
Yes.
All right, great. So this
Okay, can
is
everybody hear
from
me okay?
idea to reality, breaking into video games. It goes by a bunch
Yes.
of different titles.
All
But
right,
hi,
great.
my name is Lawrence Mascia.
So
Okay,
this
and I'm
is
your
from
guy
idea
getting
to reality,
started
breaking
in
into
making
video
games when
games.
you
It
have
goes by a
no
bunch of
idea what
different
to do. I had to do this myself when I was founding the company I currently work for, Goodnight Games, and hopefully I could save a lot of people a lot of time. So let's go to the first slide. So the first thing is all games have something very specific. It's in everything. From say the soccer the Mayans were playing with severed heads to chess to Go to anything. Every game has this one thing, and they're called core mechanics. And when you're starting out in making games, you have to make a lot of decisions very quickly in the beginning. Because a problem a lot of people have is that their games go wildly out of scope. Like everybody's heard of that one person. I don't know how relevant like this reference is today because World of Warcraft is kind of downhill. But like everyone wants to come in and say, "Oh, I want to make an MMO," and what they don't realize is this is teams of a lot of people trying to make that happen, and doing things on your own is a whole different story. And you don't want to be stuck making a game for 10 years and then never be able to release it because you're stuck in this giant scope. So the first thing you have to determine are what is called a core mechanic. Now I have two examples on screen. You might know them, maybe. We have original Mario on NES, and we have Doom. I think this might be PC one. But the core mechanic is when you boil a game down to its very base, the base part, you take everything out, you get this. And an example of that is in Mario, literally all you do is run to the right and jump. That's your core mechanic. It's otherwise known as a platformer. We see modern variations of this today, and they all boil down to run in a direction and jump. Everything else is an add on to that. And then for things like Doom, the literal title of the genre is the core mechanic. It's first person shooter. You're shooting things in first person. That's literally it. We take away all the art, all the music, all the setting, all the scenery, everything, and we just get the pure gameplay element. Your game, before we even get into engine talk, anything like that, and how to actually make it, needs to have a solid core mechanic. It's like building a house in a swamp. If you have a bad core mechanic, it'll eventually sink everything. If this isn't good, the rest of the game will not be able to sit on top of it. It's literally like Some people have mixed feelings on Red Dead Redemption, but it plays very slowly. Some people like that, some people don't. But if you're not determined to make something in that style, don't go that route. So the core mechanic must be solid. It must play well. It has to play well on its own. And one of the key factors in this is when you have other people play it, they're asking not for fixes, they're asking for more. It's a very key thing. So all games must have a core mechanic going on. So once we have the core mechanic, I can talk to you guys about, setting up a game development document, all that other stuff. But most of the time it's just going to be you. Like that's the thing. Once you start in making stuff, people are going to find you and people are going to want to work with you. It's like it's very natural in the game design field because we're in an IGDA Discord with like hundreds of people that want to make games and they all found each other because they're making games. This is the same thing. We got to get moving. So we need to set goals. We need to set motivations for yourself and for the player. So with your first game and with doing this, you want to know that you're going to be learning a skill while doing this. So we don't set the bar for expectations high. The real goal is completion, getting the game done. The rest will come, but it's getting the game done. Simple as that. So within the context of core mechanics, setting the goals would be essentially like you have to get here to do X. You have to get here to do Y. You have to trade Y for X. You have to move currency from one end to the other end. You have to travel from this place to that place. And then you are rewarded with this. Like there are always rewards because if, say, we took our core mechanic from earlier, we made a platformer, right? And I said, there's two paths in my platformer. One is super short and one is super long. You're going to expect the long one to have something at the end of it, some sort of reward, some sort of treat, some sort of modifier. So, like, you need to think in that context. You don't want to give difficulty for difficulty's sake because it's not done right. Like, anyone can make like a rage quit game. It's not very hard. Like, just go ahead and make a game where all the blocks are invisible and you die when you touch them. Like, simple as that. Congratulations, you won. But making a game that's truly hard yet balanced uses goals and motivations and doesn't essentially, like, I don't know how familiar you guys are with SNK games, but they read your buttons and that's pretty frustrating. But again, some people like that. Just depends on your audience. And moving on, the other thing to think about with these when you're setting goals and you're setting these motivations is, and believe it or not, people forget this. Like genuinely, people forget this. It's how to win and how to lose. Now, the thing about these is you can have as many of these as you want. You can essentially like win by, say, getting to the end of the game. You could also win by killing all the enemies. You could also win by collecting all the things. You can have as many or as few of these as makes sense. It's as simple as that. And then with how to lose, it's the same thing. You can die to enemies, you could die to losing life, you could die to not bringing the right thing to the right place, you could die by running out of currency or air, or there's a million things, and you can have as many of these as you want. So with how to win and how to lose, you can have all that stuff, but you have to have those two things. And just to bring up some examples, if you think about games like, say, I'll throw it back a little old school, like Doodle Jump, or say like Tetris, or original Pac-Man, or maybe Space Invaders. Like there is a win condition and there's plenty of losing conditions. You have to think about things like if we took Space Invaders, like OG Atari Space Invaders. The way to win is literally just getting a higher score than everybody else. Same for Doodle Jump, same for Tetris, same for all those like 80s high scorer kind of games. It's literally your way to win is just getting the highest score. Simple as that. So everything must have those. Even if we talk about exploratory games, things where you have to walk around or look at things, your way to win is essentially to explore the world and to be motivated to explore the world. And eventually, the win condition is you've seen all the things that the designer wants you to see. So once we've set that up, so we have our core mechanic, we have our goals and motivations, we have how to win and how to lose, now we have a foundation. Now we can start building. Now we can talk about things like secondary mechanics. And what secondary mechanics are, if the primary, you'll hear primary mechanic, you'll hear core mechanic, but if the core or the primary mechanic is literally the game boiled down to its pure base elements, the secondary mechanic is like the paint job on that. It's the addition to. It's little things that don't severely modify the gameplay but add an element to it. So what that is some examples of that are a more current one would be like the shield from original Halo. Like you get shot, it slowly regenerates over time till it becomes a gameplay mechanic. It doesn't change the first person shooting, it just adds on to. To give an older reference, let's take again any of the Marios, any of the platforming Marios. Think about what happens when you get a fire flower. Like simple as that. It changes the dynamic of the gameplay. And one of the reasons is that essentially that secondary mechanic in Mario is kind of brilliant is because not only does it change the mechanics a little bit, it lets you build a skill. Because have you ever thought, why does the fireball bounce? Why doesn't it just move in a straight line? Because it adds an element of skill. It lets you master something. Like hitting something with that fireball that's all over the place feels that much better once you've done it. But if you notice, it doesn't modify your speed, it doesn't modify how many hits you can take, it doesn't even modify your jump height. It just adds on. It adds another button and it adds another ability. So remember, all this goes together. And again, if these aren't right, nothing you can do, no amount of polish, no amount of art, no amount of sound effects can make these any better. So when you start making, you need to define these things out. And the best tip I can give is start with simple stuff. Like we're not looking to make a giant Dungeons and Dragons style RPG where you're making keeping track of like inventories and like items and stat bases and having to do a bunch of Excel spreadsheets. Like that stuff's fine, but for later. Right now, we just have to get moving and get working. Like simple as that. Like the difference between people out there right now that are doing it versus the people that aren't is they're just publishing. Like they're getting that game to completion. You'll find this when you go out, there's not a lot of people that publish their work. They don't get that far because their scope is way too big. And it becomes really horrible if it's just one person. Like I'll give you guys an example. I knew this guy way back in the day, and I don't know if I might be an old fart here, but if you remember the game Descent, and if you don't, Descent 2 is tremendous because it's basically Doom in a spaceship in full 3D running through tunnels, which is amazing. And this guy coded that from scratch with no art. That means he made floating point calculations to make polygons for 3D and like full levels and AI and he made textures programmatically, all this stuff. I'm not even that good enough of a programmer to even think about how to do that, but he did that. And the thing is, he worked on the same game for 10 years. 10 years. And it's still not done. As of me telling you this, it's not released yet. It still isn't. He just more and more and more. The scope keeps growing when he should have been done and used those assets to make something else. So keep that in mind. You always have time for big things, but for now, we have to skill build. So keep that in mind. So with that said, let's get to tips with my boy Kirby right here. So what you're going to want to do in this stage is fail early and fail often. The thing about games are, the first time you make something, it's never going to be fun. Like we test for a reason because you're going to try it and you're going to go, ugh, or like, oh, this is boring, or oh man, it's just not coming together. And you're going to see it a lot. Like that's good though, because you have to see what works and what doesn't. You're almost like a scientist testing something. Well, pretty much actually. Kind of behavioral science plays a lot of parts in this, but you want to see what works. And the only way to know is to get your hands on it. Sometimes I'll literally just sit there with ripped up pieces of paper, like making, like we're 8 years old again, going like that. You could see me, I'm making a lot of hand gestures right now, but I'll do that to kind of figure out, will this even work? Like Hideo Kojima, for all the big Metal Gears, like Metal Gear Solid, all those, he made all the levels out of Legos and used Lego men moving around the levels to determine patrol routes and all that stuff for the enemies. It's literally just because you need that feedback. You need to see, will this work? So when you're doing your initial prototype, make it quick and dirty. See if it works before you go and invest 100 hours into it and then go, oh my God, this can't happen. So you want to fail early and fail often. And then the thing you want to follow is, I'm assuming you can see my mouse, but if not, I'm on prototype right here, is you want to follow this cycle. Now, what you do in games is you're going to test a lot. Sometimes you'll test on yourself, but eventually you'll get too good at the game. So you'll need to test on other people. And the thing is, you can't teleport into their head and know what they're thinking. So what you have to do is you make a prototype, you test it on yourself till you get too good at it. You'll know what that point is. Like you'll just be like, oh, I'm going to go on here. And then you test it on other people because you want to see what other people do or what they break when you're not there. Then after you're done, you get feedback on it. What did they like? What didn't they like? What was confusing? What did they understand? Um, are your systems in place? Are people using those systems? Do people want to use those systems? All that stuff you have to start thinking and asking about because that's what eventually leads to a fun game. We have to go through this feedback loop. And obviously, like when you're testing, it's not like, say, if somebody's only into turn-based RPGs and you're making an action RPG, obviously you're not going to want to test with fans of that genre because they're not really going to play your game. So they're not going to give you the kind of feedback that you need. But if they're around and there's nobody else, of course, get their opinion on it. See what happens. Why not? More eyes are good, like just in general, very good for this. And you'll find a lot of bad games or a lot of games that didn't make it didn't have enough time to do this cycle. And the thing about this cycle is it's never ever ending. Like it literally does not end. The only time it ends is if you run out of time or money. Simple as that. Like literally simple as that. So keep that in mind. And since we're working for ourselves right now, you can take this as long as it needs to be. Doesn't have to be forever, but like keep it in mind. You always have to test. Because if anybody's played those like Steam clone asset games, you're like, where do I go? What do I do? I have no idea what I'm doing because they don't test anything, so you don't know. Um, and then moving on, a finished game is better than no game at all. Like, you just got to get it done. At the end of the day, it's just about completion. You do what you can, you prototype, you test, you get your feedback. Your first game might be great, it might not be great. You might have to dial it in. Like to give a very commercial example, I think the people who made Angry Birds had 50 failed games before they hit on that. It's just part of the process. But you just have to get it done. And plus, at the end of the day, if you make something that you're proud of, you did that. And that's something to be really proud of and really like, you know, psyched up by. Not a lot of people can do this. So, like, that's awesome. And then the last bit is set small goals and work your way up. Like, if I'm looking at my initial game, I'm thinking about, okay, what level of work do I need to do with this? Like most of you guys, if you've never used a game engine or anything like that before, let's make Space Invaders. Like everyone has a tutorial for that, and then you can add like a little modifier, and then you get it done in 2 weeks, and you're like, cool, I did this. And that's awesome. Each time you hit a little goal, you make it a slightly bigger goal for the next one. Because again, saying goals like a million times, the goal here is to skill build. So you learn a lot by starting something and finishing it, especially in this. And then with the testing, And then with all the skills you'll build along the way, sometimes projects just need to be done. Then you move to the next one, slightly bigger scope. Like let's say for your first game, you're like, oh, I'm gonna make like a first person shooter with say one enemy that like spawns and comes at you and you can kill. Like literally that's it. Might not be the like award winning game you had your eye on, but you made it. It didn't take you a long time, and you figured out, say, the engine, you figured out how to test, you figured out how to import art, you figured out how to import sound effects. You might have even made these things and figured out how to do that along the way. So you make like a little small game, you make a slightly larger game, excuse me, and a larger game and a larger game. And then you're making good stuff. Like that's really it. It's just slowly, slowly, slowly. So let's talk about our platforms here. We have a lot to go on right now, and it's really like it's just dependent on the type of genre of your users and who you want to market to. Like I'll talk from personal experience here. If you're not a mobile phone gamer, don't make mobile phone games. Like unless it's something you can be quick and easy about. If you're a PC gamer, make PC games because you've played enough of them. You know what you're doing. You know what the audience is. Like the thing is, we're not unique. So if you like something, odds are somebody else is going to like that same thing. So if you design a game around the platform you like, you're set. So to give you kind of the information on these, Apple and Android each have a fee to develop for. Apple, you're looking at about $100 a year. This renews every year. The second that you stop renewal, all your apps are gone. They're kind of a pain in the butt to work for, but their marketplace has the biggest reach. So keep that in mind. Android is $20 and you're a developer for the rest of your life. It's one-time fee and that's it. So keep that in mind. But also, Android is prone to more spam and more pirating. So again, it's give and take. Most people just do both. And it's a little easier to publish on Android, like overall, like process-wise, than it is for Apple, because their documentation is pretty bad, and now they're charging for tech support. So it's like $600 if you want 3 tech support sessions. And even then, they don't know what they're doing. So again, keep it in mind. Think about your base audience. So after that, we have that long debate of Steam versus Epic. And I'm going to be straight up with you. It doesn't matter. It's whatever your ideological principles are, go with it. Steam's about $100 a game right now. Epic is by invite only at the moment, but you can get in fairly easily if you have a back catalog. Also know that Epic is giving away a lot of developer sponsorships and scholarships. So if you have a track record or you're looking to get money, they are willing to give it. So keep that in mind. So yeah, and Steam just did. I know you guys probably know about when they purged all the shovelware from the Steam store. So one of the things is now they charge $100 a game submission. The $100 goes straight to charity. So it's not like they're pocketing it. But it's also to prevent people from just spam submitting stuff that doesn't get through the user system. So again, keep that in mind. And then the big one, which is consoles. Now, the Switch store is slightly easy to get on, but like this is the jump. So like mobile phones and PCs are very easy to develop and get on immediately. Then you have Switch, which is the easiest of the consoles. But then after that, it is kind of an uphill climb. You're going to have to do a little negotiation. You're going to have to talk with a rep. You're going to have to talk. You're going to have to essentially prototype on system. For the first game, don't even think about consoles. Like you'll get there. And then you could do like one of my friends did, if anybody's familiar with Shotgun Farmers and the guy that made it, Quasi, he basically got a great PC audience on Steam, parlayed that into an Xbox deal, and now he's like #1 on their app store for a little while. So he's doing really good. So don't think you can't build from there. Like you can start on PC and move towards consoles, but it's a different economy and a different marketplace, and it's a big investment, if that makes sense. So keep that in mind. Like, wait till you build some chops. And if you're feeling daring, go for it, honestly. Okay, going on. Now, your engine. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Pick whatever you like. There is, if you want to do the big boys, you have Unreal versus Unity. Um, my rule of thumb with these is if you're more art focused, do Unreal. If you're more programmatically focused, do Unity. That's it. Don't even worry about the rest. That's literally it. Then we have engines slightly under that. We have Construct 2. We have Game Salad. We have Game Maker. There's like a billion and one littler engines. Construct 2 is really good. These are all like all these engines are WYSIWYG. So it's essentially drag and drop interface if you want it. And they've added those to both Unreal and Unity. So keep that in mind. But they're all drag and drop programming and you can get up and running very quickly. Like our company right now is using Unreal, but we prototype in Game Salad because it's really quick to just slap something together and see if it works. But we maxed out that engine with our initial games and then it wasn't worth it for us. But we started small and kind of moved up. What you pick does not matter as long as you stick with it. So keep that in mind. So again, you have Unity and Unreal, you have Construct 2, Game Maker, Game Salad, like all of these are fine. Know though, Unity and Unreal are free. There are some stipulations when you start making money. Those change kind of monthly. So make sure you look that up. Right now, I think it's just should be 5,000 and up or 10,000 and up. If you make profit, they're going to ask for a cut of that. And then when you have things like Construct 2, Game Maker, and Game Salad, they don't take a cut of your profits, but there's going to be a fee associated. Like, to give an example, Game Maker will charge you depending on where you put it. So, like, if you wanted to do mobile, there's a separate charge to publish to Apple, and then there's a separate charge for Android or PC, etc. So always make sure you keep the end result in mind when you're pricing these out. Like Game Salad is a monthly subscription now, which I don't really agree with on any subscriptions, but like that's where software is moving, so we kind of have to adapt with it. Construct 2 is the same model as Game Maker. You pay if you publish. Simple as that. So that's a good. I recommend if you're just getting into gaming, you start with one of those like Construct 2, Game Maker, Game Salad. You can kind of bang out a lot of smaller games very quickly and with like a low time investment, if that makes sense. You can learn it pretty quickly. So with that said, let's move on to the business end of things. So obviously we want to get these things out there. Now, when you're publishing, what'll happen is if you don't have an LLC, it's going to go out under your name. Now, that's entirely fine. Keep this in mind. That's entirely fine. The only time it isn't is if someone sues you. So if you are not an LLC or a corporation, don't be a corporation because like that's a separate tax bracket and that's no, don't do that. Not at this level. But an LLC, basically, if you get sued, they can only take from the company. They can't take from you. Keep that in mind. They can only take from the company. They cannot take from you. So when I was starting, I formed that just as a protection for myself. Should anything, go horribly wrong and I have to flee the country. But yeah. So the other thing is it's cheap. It's $200. Like I was able to do my entire business through Chris Reed Law. If you're at IGDA events on the East Coast, you definitely seen him. He's a great dude. And it was around 200. Obviously don't come at him with numbers. He'll come at you with numbers. But what I'm saying is it's affordable. I got that, contracts, and everything to just literally pass through and start the LLC. After you started, it's not like you pay fees or anything. Your tax ID goes through your same tax ID. It's just basically a layer of protection. I'd recommend it, but when you're ready, you don't have to do it right away. Keep that in mind. So, marketing tips. This is the kind of wild west of game design, right? So What you need to do is think about what people want to see. So you don't want to do essentially, and I'm guilty of this. You go on Goodnight Games Instagram or Twitter. We're definitely guilty of this because some days you just got to post something. But what you need to do is figure out the people like me. When are they online? When are they using social media? Like, what sites are they on? Where do they go? And then how can I get in touch with them? Like, say if we're taking Instagram, for example, um, is your user on Instagram? Okay, what kind of hashtags would they use? Like, are they in these kinds of threads? Obviously, you don't go like, tagging things Call of Duty and you're not making a military shooter. You know what I mean? You're not going to get those people, and more than likely, you're going to get a lot of trolls out of it. So keep that in mind. But then basically, what you do is you accumulate a number of hashtags. Nothing giant. You don't want anything with like 4 million posts. You want stuff with like 10,000 to 50,000 posts. Like things where if the feed moves, people notice and will interact more. And you want to post to those. Like say a good tip is on Instagram. Like most of the people we know are fans of our games are online around 7 p.m. and they visit like a very specific set of hashtags. We make sure to always put with our Instagram post. So like things like that. With Twitter, it's more you go into hashtags. There's screenshot Saturday. There's indie game. There's game dev. Like you use those, but you also branch out. Like marketing is essentially about being clever and making things that people want to react to. Like if you've seen, the social media accounts of like most game development magazines, if you notice they're basically, pardon my French, always talking shit about something. That's not because they necessarily believe that. It's because it gets reactions. It gets people to talk, and that's how they make their money off of ad revenue. So you're kind of the same way, but not on that evil level. You need to post things that make people talk, like discussions, open-ended questions. How do you feel about X, Y, and Z? Here's a poll. Like when things drop that are important, like we're in the Xbox and PS5 launch right now. Like, are you in that conversation? Where are people like you hanging out and how do you reach them? It's literally like that. You enter those same discussions. The only thing I'd say is keep everything, like professional. You don't want to be cursing at people. You don't want to be starting like online beef. You don't want to do any of that because that's just annoying attention. And you don't want it. So you want to just encourage discussion. The other thing is, in general, get out there. Obviously, we're kind of in a pandemic, so that's a little hard right now, but things will get better and things will open up eventually. And with that, there's a lot of groups depending on what coast you're on. We have Sheep's Meow, we have Play Crafting, there's the IGDA, hint, hint, right here. You guys are already in it, but you need to be in all of those places. Go out, meet some people, show your game. And the thing is, at the end of the day, like I'm an anxious person. Like before I give any talk, I feel like I'm going to throw up most of the time, but I can still get out there and do it. And as someone that's given a lot of speaking presentations over the years, people in game design and gaming in general are really welcoming and really chill. And most they're just quiet. So like any of these events when you're out there, people want to talk to you because we all like games. Like simple as that. So you just go up, you just kind of go like, fuck it. I'm here. I'm going to see what I can do. And if you're not comfortable with that, then you start online and you work your way up. And if it's not, there's things not in your area, again, you start online and you work your way up. It's just about slowly entering the conversation with things you're essentially feeling good about, like things that aren't like crazy. Um, it's just literally simple as that. It's just showing up and talking as much as you can. And I know that's hard, and it was hard for me when I started, but you eventually build momentum. And once momentum gets built, there's nothing that can stop you. Nothing at all. And you can do this. I know you can do this. Simple as that. So, and here is where to go. This is one of the photos from one of the playcrafting events we were at. I don't know if you can see us in that photo, but they're usually pretty packed. This is in New York. They also have Playcrafting has San Francisco as well, and I think they have they have Boston too, and there's Florida as well. They do have a Discord. Same, obviously, with the IGDA. We're in the New Jersey chapter. Shout out, and sheeps me out. There's also meetup groups. The NYU has their game design society, and they have testing days. Obviously, all these are suspended, but these are regular things, so you can get on all the newsletters for all of these and get updates on them. So keep that in mind. And also, this is too, if you're planning on doing, say, a board game, not a digital game, these are really important because these are where you can host your games and get many core players. I've seen a lot of successful board game developers at these because they create kind of, you can get a table, you create a nice environment, and you kind of run it almost like a dungeon master in D&D. And you're just like, here it is. And if you can create a great experience, literally people will buy a copy of your game right there because they're psyched about it. Like, simple as that. So yeah. So what I wanted to do for the last bit is just to open up the floor to any questions. Like anyone in the Discord right now, anything you want to know that I can try and answer about game design, I will answer. So if anyone has any questions, by all means, the floor is yours. All right, cool. Well, obviously, we have technological limitations, but at any point, if you ever want to know anything, we're at Goodnight Games on Instagram, we're at Goodnight Games on Twitter, and you can get in touch with us anytime. If you see the Goodnight Games banner at any event, I know you're going to see it because it's a giant laughing moon that's 8 foot tall. Come and say hi. Like, simple as that. We'll guide you around if you've never been at any of these things before, and, like, we'll help you out.
Thank you. Thank you, Lawrence. That was really, really helpful.
Thanks so much for having me.
I know I enjoyed it because I'm actually starting to work on my first game, so a lot of good tips there.
Woo! That's good to
And
hear.
yeah, and for all those people that came in late, we actually we're streaming this on our YouTube channel, so you can catch the whole thing on video later on. And again, thanks, Lawrence, and thanks everybody for coming.
Yeah, thanks guys for showing up. Olga, you're amazing. I hope you feel better. Thank you so much
Oh,
for
it's
having
okay.
me.
I'll be fine.
I'm sending
Thank
positive
you.
vibes.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Okay, cool. Let me I'll give the screen back.
So I guess that's it, unless Jess or Kevin, you guys want to add something?